So we're in my little apartment and it's about 7 in the morning. And what I want to do is make a video, a short video hopefully, about this illness I have called RSD-CRPS, or Reflex Sympathetic Dystrophy Syndrome, Complex Regional Pain Syndrome, which is what doctors prefer now as CRPS. It's a neurological disorder that came on after several injuries at work that went unattended too long. And it's akin to fibromyalgia, but as several doctors said to me, it's significantly more intense. So the pain is more intense, the symptoms are more intense, the effects, I guess, are more intense. With RSD-CRPS, we lose bone, we lose function, we lose muscle, we're just in constant, overwhelming pain almost all the time. It just shifts from region of the body to region of the body. And what happens is the area that's affected, like the areas that were injured, were both of my hands and both of my arms. I had carpal tunnel in my hands so bad from work that I couldn't feel my hands for about a year. And my boss kept saying to me, if you go to the doctors, we'll find someone to replace you. If you go to the doctors, we'll fire you. And I was a single mom with finally a constant paycheck. It wasn't great, but it was a paycheck. And so I kept working, and I worked until I ripped both the tendons off of each elbow, and ended up needing surgeries. I had 2 on this arm, 2 on this arm, or my hands and arms, and needed to have more because I had torn not just the muscle and tendons, but also the nerves in my body, in my arms. And the last surgeon I saw up in Boston said, there's nothing more I can do. He said, we really do need to do more work, but there's no point. You have RSD, CRPS, which other doctors had said to me. They had diagnosed me, but the last surgeon said, there's no point. You'll never paint again. You'll never work again. And I tend to be on the stubborn side of things, and although it's been painful and almost impossible, becoming more and more impossible to do a lot of tasks, I tend to do what I want regardless, or do what I think is best regardless. I've had several accidents in my life where doctors said, you'll never walk again. We need to put a rod in your spine and you'll be in a wheelchair within a couple of years, and I'm still walking. It's becoming increasingly more difficult because of this illness, which was spread from the injuries, and that's what I'm going to get to in a sec, but I'm still walking. I was diagnosed 6-8 years ago, I think. I'm not sure now. And I was told within 5 years, with this particular illness, you'll be in a wheelchair within 5 years. And I very stubbornly ignored it. At this point, back then I could see doctors and I could have medication like Lyrica and Cymbalta helped with the pain. And so did Vicodin, but I had to stop taking Vicodin. But now I can't afford to see a doctor. I have insurance, but the deductibles are so high that I can't go to see, I can't even see a general physician. Like, I can't see a practitioner to get the appointments to get to see a specialist or another specialist. I just can't do it. I also don't have the time or the energy or the patience to sit down and explain over and over and over again and have no one believe me, which is what happens with this particular illness because it's not well known. People don't want to treat it. They don't know how to treat it, so they don't care. I was sent to an example is I was sent to a specialist in Boston, somewhat of a specialist, a pain specialist in Boston. I waited 6 months for the appointment. I was flown there because I got stuck in traffic the first time and ended up being 4 hours late. So I waited 6 months for that first appointment, and because of construction on the Sagamore Bridge on Cape Cod, I was 4 hours late to the appointment. I mean, it was really atrocious. And I was in horrible pain when I got there. They almost had to wheelchair me into the room. I sat there waiting over an hour to see the doctor. He walked in, he looked at my chart and said, "Oh, this is workers' comp?" And I said, "Yes." And his assistant said, "Yes." He goes, "Oh, she just has fibromyalgia." And walked out the door. That was it. So I sat there and I said, no, because Dr. So-and-so over at this surgeon's office in Boston, a very famous surgeon, said, "It's RSD and I need to see you." And he said, no, it's fibromyalgia. We can't do anything for you," and walked out the door. And I just don't have the patience or the energy for that any longer. And when you see a general practitioner, I saw one practitioner in New Bedford who was great, but the hoops you have to jump through to find someone who to listen to you, or it's just overwhelming after a while. So here we are 6 to 8 years later, and because of this, the nerves all over my body are constantly firing off, and firing off incorrectly. And with every season, I seem to delve a little bit deeper into this rabbit hole of pain and misfire and misfunction of RSD CRPS. And over this past weekend, I could have sworn we were going to get hit by a tornado or a hurricane, because the weather really affects me. And what happens is my arms will swell up, the skin feels like it's going to burst. It gets very hard and it feels like it's going to burst. My arms and legs swell up. And these are only a couple of the symptoms. I will lose feeling in my legs and feet, lose feeling in my hands and arms, lose feeling in my face, my neck, my throat. Can't feel my nose sometimes. I'll have spots. It looks like I have measles. I'll have spots that climb from my feet on up my body. And it's like the most severe rash you can think of. There's constant burning, there's constant pain. My spine always hurts. It's just it all is just in varying degrees, and that's not all the symptoms. It's just a few of them that I can think of right now. Sometimes I can't close my hands, sometimes I can't open them. Sometimes my muscles will go into spasms, and my hands and feet will twist like this. I'll wake up with my hands and feet twisted, and I have to try and untwist them over and over and over again in the middle of the night or during the day. I was walking a couple of weeks ago, helping a friend of mine out, and one of my feet, which had been spasming all night, shot out, and all the toes contracted, like they all crippled up, and I fell over and he had a fit. Because he doesn't know how sick I am. And I'm not sharing that information with him because, number one, I don't think he would care. So, and there's nothing anyone can do anyway. There's absolutely nothing. There's no cure. It's just a progression of down the rabbit hole we go. So this weekend, speaking of the rabbit hole, I thought I felt a storm coming on. And with me, when there's a storm coming, and it can be up to 2 weeks away, it feels like I'm being crushed in a baler, just mashed. And I was at my studio this weekend. I was fortunate enough to have 2 whole days to paint. And I'm in my studio just trying to stay awake because I was in so much pain. And the nerve endings, the nerves in my brain were firing off, so that I would lay down to rest, but it was almost hallucinatory. My brain kept firing off and I couldn't think. Sweat's pouring down my face. I couldn't see really well. I have nerve damage in this eye from another accident, so I'm losing vision in this eye, and the RSD sometimes makes the optic nerve swell up, and then it just hurts. I had a blood vessel burst in this eye over the weekend, so yeah, it's pretty pitiful and gross. It's so attractive, but I just went down this deep rabbit hole, and I'm just coming out of it today. I had trouble, oh my god, I had so much trouble walking from last Wednesday to last night. We'll see how today goes. 2 nights ago, I was walking here, walking my dog, walking Bugsy around, and all of a sudden I lost control of both my legs, and I've had people laugh at me on the street because it looks like I'm drunk, and it's not. I literally can't feel my legs. I can't feel my feet, or they're in so much pain, I can barely move them. They're causing me so much pain. So, I'm walking Bugsy, and I lost control of my left leg first, and so I'm half walking, half dragging it, and then I lost control of my right leg. Then I started sweating, which is, I hate it, I hate sweating. I hate it, and I hate even saying it out loud. It's just so disgusting. But I started sweating, which is a symptom of RSD CRPS. And I don't sweat. My face does not sweat, and I had sweat pouring down my face. And all of a sudden, ba-boom, I lost vision in both eyes. Not completely, it wasn't black, but I had white spheres in front of my eyes, like huge white spheres, right in the center, and I couldn't see. And I had black spots around them. So I'm dragging myself down the street, I have Bugsy, I'm sweating, and I have spots in front of my eyes. I look like a drug addict. Just like I'm high and or really drunk and out of control. We made it home, but I was absolutely terrified. I kept thinking I was going to pass out. I kept feeling like I was going to pass out, like I was going to throw up. And then within 2 hours, I was okay again. But the key for me was being able to call someone, or I actually couldn't see my phone. So I went on Facebook and messaged a friend, and I kind of know where the keys are, so I was able to type out a message. But luckily I had someone I could reach out to. I have very good neighbors, but I couldn't read my phone to call them. I was really scared. I was really scared, just like I was the first time I lost feeling in my legs. The night that happened, I was walking Bugsy, and I was two blocks from my apartment, and I lost feeling in both my legs. By the time I was half a block from my apartment, I was just shuffling down the sidewalk, and I remember I had pain shoot up my spine, out into my arms, and I fell over into, not into a dumpster, but up against a dumpster. And I had trouble, like, standing back up again, and this guy walked by me and laughed. And I was terrified. Because there's one thing I've done my whole life besides artwork, which has come and gone. And now it's here in full force. Being able to paint is here in full force. Because the doctor said to me, "You'll never paint again." Really? Watch this. But I've always loved to walk. And I used to walk, as soon as my parents let me leave the house alone, I started walking, and I would walk and walk and walk and walk. I walked all over Cape Cod. I love walking. I love walking Boston, but I've walked like the whole length of our hometown, the width, which it's not very big, but I've walked from town to town to town. Bugsy and I used to walk Great Island and Wellfleet in all weather, year-round. I've been hiking in New Hampshire, Maine. I'm not like a, big EMS sportsman hiker, an extreme hiker. I love walking. I love quiet. I love hearing the trees and the birds and giving Bugsy freedom. And now I can't do that. I was hiking up to 14 miles a day with Bugs, and now I'm lucky if we get a mile around the city block. And in the past year, things have gotten really financially difficult. I lost my truck. Excuse me, I had to sell my truck. I almost lost my apartment. I'm still just hanging on to that by a fingernail, even though I hate it. It's a dump. I have my shared space, which they let me pay something on it every week. I'm waiting for my live work to even be started so I can move in. But now I have no way to get around, except, on foot and by bus, which is exhausting. And I'm down to this. This is like I'm lucky to have a computer. Someone gave it to me. I'm lucky to have a camera. Another friend gave it to me because I've burnt out so many computers in the past year and a camera. But if it weren't for this, I would have almost no interaction with anyone at all. Ooh, sorry about that. Almost no interaction with anyone at all. And that's why I do these YouTube videos, because I really am not a social person, and I really was becoming more and more limited as to how I could interact with people. But anyway, that's my little video on RSD CRPS. Please look it up. And I just want to say, if you see somebody who's struggling, because I know a lot of people who have invisible illnesses like mine. Mine is called the suicide illness because it's so severe that people tend to kill themselves. It was first diagnosed during the Civil War with veterans who were coming home complaining of burning sensations in their arms and legs and wrapping themselves in cloths, cool cloths, watered cloths, and there is no cure, like I said. It only gets worse and worse. So people tend to kill themselves. It's extremely painful. It's extremely overwhelming. I can't begin to tell you how overwhelming it is. Like a cross between, at its worst, maybe being super high while being tasered, while being crushed in a baler. I think that's might be the best way to describe it. At its worst, which comes on several times a week. And for people like me who are alone, we've got to do our grocery shopping, we've got to do our laundry, we've got to do basic stuff while being that sick. So if you know someone who has an invisible illness like chronic fatigue or arthritis or something like that, one of the greatest things you can do is just ask, what can I do for you today? Offer to help. Just one day a week. I had an attack several summers ago and I had no car again. That's another story, but I had no car again. And my face was on fire for 2 solid weeks, and my mouth and my throat, and I couldn't talk. And I had a hard time walking, and I kept asking on Facebook, could someone come help me get ice cream? It took 2 weeks for anyone to have the time. So if you know someone who's struggling, please just offer to help. It could mean the whole world. Ciao.